This is the second monotype video demonstrating reductive processes where we're going to be removing some of the color that we applied in the first video. So I wanted to show you some of this while it's still wet and then some when it's dry. One of the simplest ways you can remove is actually just with your paintbrush before we get into the other tools. So you can remove with a paintbrush with different amounts of water. Let's try some clean water here. So you could splash some water on. You could just leave that in place and see how those splashes of water actually start to make the color move. Let's try that in a couple places. You could take that fairly wet brush and start pushing the color around, making a different kind of brush stroke. You could take a dry paper towel and go to one of those places that's wet and let's see how this works, and just remove, and this will add some of the texture of the towel, but only in those places where I dropped, where it's wet. In places where it's dry, the towel won't disturb the color. In places where it's wet, it will lift up the color. As you can see, I'm totally ignoring the drawing I had underneath there, which is fine. I just wanted a starting point. Here's another example. I could also clean out my brush and dry it on the paper towel. In places where my color is a little bit shiny, I can use the brush to actually pick up color and move it around with a slightly moist brush, and then as it picks up the color, then it no longer removes but starts reapplying it. So you have to keep cleaning it out if you wanted to make a distinct line. So as I said, this is one of the big differences between monotype and painting directly with watercolor on paper, is your ability to erase and lift out is absolute. You can lift totally down to the white. And you can do it in a lot of different textures. If you try this directly on the paper, the lifting out is not going to be as complete, and it's more likely to get kind of muddy. Let's try also some different tools. Let's try a dry Q-tip. So somewhere where my color is a little bit wet, we can take the dry Q-tip and lift up. Here's another place where I can do that. Now that if the Q-tip is a little bit damp, I can work in the dry area as well. You can remove some or all of the color, depending on how saturated your Q-tip is. You can, once the Q-tip gets full of color, you can actually use it for adding color. And I encourage you to work on several test prints at the same time, how I'm doing, because then when you get an idea on one, you can try it out on another. How I removed color from this one and added it to this one. And maybe I don't like any of the results, but I sure am learning a lot about the possibilities of this medium. So go easy on yourself with your expectations. Let it be about trying out a process. Just for fun, I brought out a couple of tools I've never used before. Let's see what I can do with like the end of a straw. Can I make some kind of, yeah, I can move the color around. Maybe I can drag it around in a way that's a little bit different than using a brush. I can kind of scrape off the color and move it around so you get some effects that are kind of like a palette knife in oil painting. And some noises too. Maybe I can stamp with some of that color I've picked up. And I grabbed this, it's kind of like was wrapped around some fruit. Let's see if I can get some kind of texture. In a dry area, I can kind of scratch that across, make a scratchy texture. How does it behave on a wetter area? What if I wet it? Could be a way of applying a texture, and I might want to keep on experimenting with this. I was bringing up some of the bubbles from the dish soap, and I can work with those or I can move them around. All right, I'm going to do one more reductive video when these dry.